what I view this as is sort of a first of many events hosted by 400 Black Dollars. What I'd like to do is talk about different subjects, different topics, get multiple people involved. If you can answer the question, answer it. If you don't feel comfortable answering the question, don't answer it. If Garrison, Stephanie, you guys want to ask questions, you can ask questions. As we start going, what I'd like to do is maybe do one of these like every other week. And obviously start getting some topics that are relevant to current stuff, and then some topics that are more about things that have happened within the Black community, what can be done to improve the situation in the Black community, and a bunch of other things that we can discuss. I know Ed is obviously one of the voracious readers that we have, as you can tell from the books behind him. But just try and get obviously some honest viewpoints from people about what they think or what you guys think, and what we can do to start improving some stuff. And then what we're going to do is we're going to post these on the website. I'm going to blast them obviously over YouTube and several different places, and just try and build up more traffic to the website. So as we really start pushing 400 Black Dollars, we begin to get a following, and not just become this thing that starts up and goes away. So that being said, it seems like some of you guys have your phones on mute or your mics on mute. Whether you have it on mute or not is probably okay for now. If we had a lot more people, then I would probably say everybody put your stuff on mute. With it being now, what I'll do is I'll just go around the room and I'll ask a question. As I ask the question, then you can answer the question, be as honest as possible. But before you answer it the first time, then what I want to do is make sure you guys introduce yourself, say who you are. Obviously, everybody is somewhat affiliated with 400 Black Dollars, but just say who you are, and then you can answer the question. If you want to give more background information, you can do that as well. That's entirely up to you. But at least for the initial, make sure you introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there. Anybody have any questions to start? No? All right. So the first question I wanted to ask, which is actually a doozy, and I think we might spend a lot of time on this, but I wanted to get when I talk to people and they talk about Trump, and I was just speaking with someone last week, they were telling me how Trump has gotten more Black people to be interested in following him, and more supporters. And I tried to explain to the individual that that simply was not true. And what I'd like to do is start with the question of, what do you think about Trump? So that people, obviously we're somewhat of all the same background. We all have some of the same feelings towards whether it's politics or what's happening in the world. But what I'd like to start is, hey, give me your honest opinion. And if we can keep our answers down to about a minute, of what you think about Trump. Abubak, you in the upper left, so I'm gonna go ahead and start with you.
All right. What do I think about Trump? I think he manifests the ill that is wrong with the United States. And what I mean by that is, I don't believe he should have, according to how the United States is supposed to be, I don't think he should have ever been allowed to even become a Republican nominee, let alone president of the United States. And how that all came about is the ills of the United States, that it could work with the Electoral College that would allow him to come into being. He displays the ugly American, everything that is ill about what we've seen, because a lot of us have been military. When you go overseas, and sometimes you'll hear from foreigners, hey, you got this ugly American. He's the epitome of that. And I think he needs to be voted out. He should have never gotten in. And you mentioned before how it appears to be that a lot of Black people are coming around to support him. I think that's exaggerated. And if anything, a lot of that is fake news. And that needs to be watched carefully, because to this day, you really have to do a lot of research on your own to find out what's true or not.
Okay. Ed, do you want to tell us what you think about it?
If you study the history of the Electoral College, first off, it was put in place so that the southern states would have more juice in electing the president of the United States. And they made sure, that's when they went with the 3/5 rule to get their representatives in place. That's how the whole concept of Electoral College, rather than have this thing where it was majority vote. They didn't want a majority vote because they was not the majority. That's why Electoral College in play in the first place. What Trump represents, as Abubak said, is the worst that America has to offer. But it's the truth of America. Study every president that's ever been elected in this country and look at either their slave ownership or what comments they've made. Woodrow Wilson, his comment, he the one that segregated the federal government. So just study history of all the presidents. He falls in line with American democracy as far as when it relates to African Americans in this country. He's no different than the rest of them. The difference is we have social media and we have TV, and so now everybody can be exposed overnight or in 10 seconds once something happens. That was not the case 40 years ago or 25 years ago.
Okay. Warren, you want to chime in on that? You're on mute, Warren.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, wow, I won't go into all of my true feelings because
you retired. What the hell does it matter? You can say whatever you want.
Listen, you know what? And I mean, I'm almost positive we have a few Republicans online, and so I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I am no fan of this president. He is certainly someone that I've known for some years, being from New Jersey and being around Atlantic City, watching him operate. So I've just, he's always been a phony individual, and that's all I see now. He doesn't understand what truth means. His path was always laid for him with his father's money, because I really don't think he's a very smart businessman. And, initially he said he would run this country like a business. Well, if I look at all of his businesses, he's run them into the ground, done nothing but take money from people. And if you understand where this nation is at this point, we've taken several steps backwards from where we used to be. Progress for African Americans has already been difficult. And so to feel those, the few positive steps that we had made being pushed back by this guy, it's something I'm just tired of. And, I'm still not sure we're going to be able to get him out of there, simply because he never plays a fair game. And so I've thought he was a Russian asset for most of his presidency, and I'm still of that belief. So not once has he denounced any of the interference that Putin or anybody else has made on his behalf, and that should have been enough right there for Congress to get rid of him under I don't know. I think he's committed treason when he asked Russia to look into this and look into that. And so, I'm no fan of his whatsoever. I'd be happy to see him out of here and at least let us return to a somewhat normal democracy where the word of the people counts, law and order is in order, and everybody once again begins to follow it. But, I think I better stop right now, because if I get on the bicycle, we don't know where we're going. So,
All right, Eric, you want to chime in on that? You joined a little late, so the question was, what do you think about Donald Trump? We can't hear you, Eric. It's unmuted, but for some reason we just couldn't hear you. No.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. So I think just like history has shown, Donald Trump is the response to the backlash of any social progress that takes place in this country in regard to what are deemed minorities. If Barack Obama hadn't occurred, there wouldn't be a Donald Trump. I think he actually speaks to the very worst of our fellow Americans and how many of them are really ingrained and indoctrinated to the American machismo and the American arrogance that I think all of us who have been stationed overseas tried to avoid when we were among local nationals or within other countries and we were the guests. So I think it shouldn't have been a really surprise to me, because I think history has shown anytime there's been social progress, there's a direct backlash. And that backlash seeks to maintain the status quo and the control. And I think just like I think it was Warren that said, his business so-called accolades cannot be anything that anyone should be touting as a success that would carry over into a success of the country, because the record shows that he's not a good businessman and he's not a good human. He also speaks to the very hypocrisies that this country has always had. We're a nation that does not have a national religion, but we're founded on Christian values. And he epitomizes nothing of the sort, as like many of the early founders, as well as other presidents. I think Woodrow Wilson's name was brought up as well. So I think our nation is overdue a reckoning, because we tout ourselves as the ideal and the light and the beacon on the hill, and which it is on paper, but in application, in actuality, we've never been. He's the epitome of that.
Okay. Richard, I know you're joining late. I don't know if you want to chime in on this first question. I'll give you an opportunity to. But the question was, what do you think about Donald Trump? Unmute your microphone. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, where do you even start? I think that he's, you know, I don't know. I feel like whatever I say, it's just this redundant, ridiculous comments on everything we all know. He's a liar. He's a thief. He's a charlatan. He is a bad businessman. He is, you know, obviously silver spoon. He has no sense of morality. I actually think he is actually amoral. I don't think that he has any sense of morality. He's a narcissist. He's just a terrible human. And basically, I think it is because of a lack. He has no ability for empathy or sympathy. And he basically is absolutely antithetical to anybody that should be president. He has all of the exact opposite qualities of someone who should be president. And
you know what's interesting, to piggyback on basically what everybody said, I think if you remember when Kennedy was shot, they asked Malcolm X, hey, what do you think about the assassination of Kennedy? And he said, well, the chickens have come home to roost. I think when you look at, I'm not sure if it was Eric or Ed or somebody said, but if there was no Barack Obama, there might not have been a Donald Trump. And in my opinion, he's the puppet master. Very seldom is someone like Donald Trump the puppet. So not saying that he's a puppet, but he's the one in front of the curtain, as opposed to being the one who's normally pulling the strings behind the curtain. And from a way that he speaks, his vernacular, everything. I'm used to it because I deal with a lot of companies. So I see a lot of people and they write a certain way and do a certain thing. We try and make sure that we speak a certain way. We have the correct grammar. The emails are constructed a certain way. As you make your way up the food chain, that's just simply not the case. And I think from his perspective, he's used to being the person that doesn't need to have any morals, doesn't need to care about anything. And now he's the one in front of the curtain, and we're just not accustomed to that. We're accustomed to somebody being a little more polished, like a Mike Pence, and not the person just screaming, yelling, and saying wild things in front of the microphone. But that being said, I'll go on to the next one. Jasmine, there are certain questions, like I said, I'm just not going to ask you. Go on to the next question is.
What happened to Stephanie?
Oh, you want to say something, Stephanie? Okay, I'll let you say something. Go ahead. Go ahead. What do you
I don't
think
have an opinion.
Say that again.
I don't have an opinion.
You have an opinion, but go ahead. I'll let you say something. I was gonna try and get people outside to submit questions, but go ahead. I want to hear your opinion. Go ahead.
What I think about Donald Trump is that in actuality, I'm a believer. So
a believer in Trump?
No, a believer.
No,
a good question. Yeah, that's good. You clarified that. Let me clarify. I mean that you said that. So let me clarify. No, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. So so everything that I'm learning to do is to put using Jesus as a yardstick or a measuring stick, I should say. And so it's like the thing about a leader being a servant, setting an example. Trump is none of that because he does not have empathy for the people. He doesn't have compassion for people. He's in a bubble where he just sits on his, and I don't fault him for that. Everybody wasn't able to be born with the silver spoon in their mouth. So that he was, then it just puts him in a place where he does not relate to people. He's not relatable to us because he hasn't lived it. He hasn't experienced it. So he has no knowledge about it. He may have a little knowledge, but he has no knowledge to the sense of being, wanting to really be involved, to know what can I do? How can I help? How can I assist? How can I pull you up? So I just, in my church right now, in our Bible studies, we're just taking the times, the political climate, we're taking the political unrest. I mean, like Black Lives and all that's been happening, and the police killings and even the pandemic, and we're trying to put all that in relations to our faith. So when you put your faith first, and when you look at when you study about the God and how God will use the enemy in order to get his people in line, and when you and things like that, then it just helps you kind of look at it. So I believe that Trump, though I don't like his ways, I don't like his personality, I don't know how his politics, how he deals with things, he is who he is. And he is a person that, like the children of Israel, they didn't want to listen to God, so they wanted a king like the other nations. So this is the king you guys voted for. So this is who you got. So you got to deal with it.
Not to speak over you, but I think I do plan on doing something about religion and the effect religion has had on the Black community. I know a lot of people, and I know no one needs to chime in on this, but I know a lot of people feel that part of the reason that Black people or the Black community is in the condition that it's in today is because of religion and because we've put so much faith into things that we should not have been putting our faith into. I don't know that this is the discussion for that, but I get your points about what you guys have been doing and how you view that basically he's come along because of people need to wake up. But what I wanted to do, so that we didn't spend too much time on that, I'm gonna go to actually the second question.
Mm-hmm.
The second question I have is, are you voting, and why is this election so important? And there's a second part to that, which is, what effect will this election have on Black America? Richard, I'll start with you. I know you're voting, right? And I'm gonna start with you because of the look you just gave. You're on mute again.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, there's no question that everybody should vote. It seems really straight to me. The people that say that, voting is stupid or irrelevant, well, okay, so it could be, but there are two choices. One is it's stupid and irrelevant and you do it and it doesn't mean anything. The other one is it's stupid and irrelevant, but maybe it actually does mean something. So not voting just doesn't make any sense to me. I just had a discussion with my son, actually. He was just here, and that's the reason I joined late. We were talking about his schooling and other stuff. But the election is really important for me because the number one issue for me is actually climate change. So obviously social, racial, and all the other problems that are facing the country are extremely important. But this is actually an existential crisis. And if Donald Trump wins, I don't believe I think the chances for the planet to actually survive, and I mean, not the planet's going to be fine, but for people to survive and for the world to go in a way that is even approaches anything close to a chance for being sustainable is completely gone. So that's why this election is extremely important. And even with Biden, I think he's a middle of the road guy. And so I don't, I'm already frustrated with him because he after, I want to put this politely, I have a very graphic way that I put this to people that can handle it. And I don't feel comfortable here saying my analogy, but basically if you get in a fight with somebody, they've beat the hell out of you. And then after they beat you down, you then turn around to them and extend your hand and say, hey, well, how can we make this good for you? I don't understand it. So he's already saying, we're going to reach across the aisle. We're going to figure out how to make this work for everybody. Okay, so I don't really get that, but that's a little bit of an aside. So the election's important for all of the reasons that Donald Trump is a complete douche and needs to be taken out. Environmental being the top of the important stack for me. All of the rest of it doesn't matter. If literally the oceans are taking over the first 10 miles of every coastline, racial injustice will become it will become worse, and it will become a lot less important on some level because people will just be looking at straight survival, and all of the gradients below that won't matter as much. But so how will it affect the Black community? I just dipped into that. So I can't imagine things getting less racial and less divisive with Donald Trump still in the office. That just seems really obvious. So if we want to get away from divisiveness and racial divisiveness, then I think that you have to move away from Donald Trump because that's what he is.
But I was reading something this morning, and they listed about 10 different issues that people felt were important for this upcoming election. Mm-hmm. And climate change was one of the last ones. It was like 10.
Yep. The most important issue, absolutely the most important issue. And it's not, sometimes doesn't even make the list. It doesn't make any sense. So it affects absolutely every person's life on the planet, and it will affect economies, and it will affect everything. And, like the wildfires in California, I don't understand how that goes to the bottom of the list. The hurricanes in Louisiana, how does it go to the bottom of the list? Famine in Africa, how does that go to the bottom of the list? I don't get it. So on a world stage, it's by far and away the most important thing we have to discuss. And people will prioritize all kinds of other stuff, thinking those things are more important. But if the climate change thing is real, and I believe it is, all of those things become much, much less important. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I hope that race relations is the number one issue. That would be awesome, because that means that we've gotten past the existential crisis that is screaming down on us.
Yeah. Jasmine, I think this is one that you can answer. Are you voting? And why is this election important?
Yes, I'm voting. And I think this election is important because, one, I think a lot has happened over the last couple of years. And I think that, so I have a little bit of a different approach. I feel like it is important because I think our two last presidents have taught us a lot. One, they taught us that anything is possible. So I'm always going to try and find the silver lining. That anything is possible, being that we had an African-American male be the president. And then the second being that someone who has absolutely no political ties or any lineage in that area could come and be president. I think if there is a positive that we can sift through, that would be the one that I would find. But I think that it's important because we are at a place right now where we are like extremely divided. And I think that in order to make that change, I think people have to get involved. And I think people have to understand that not speaking up previously, or not whether they didn't vote or whatever, has what created kind of like where we are right now. And I think it's important that people get involved, I think.
But can I ask this question though?
Yes.
So playing devil's advocate, and somebody else can chime in, or Jasmine, you can answer it as well. Playing devil's advocate, we've been voting. I'm gonna go from the pure Black perspective. We've been voting all of this time, and I can pull up a Gil Scott-Heron album, and he's going to talk about from the 60s and 70s the same problems that we have today, almost verbatim. So does that mean that voting has really changed anything over the past 50 years? Or is it still the same? And yeah, we're going through the process, and it's like going in the club and the guy's not dressed nice and he's never going to get an opportunity to date any of the women in there, but he's still going to ask. So is that what it is?
I feel like in history with everything, there is a significant period where things are really, really terrible. Things are bad. And then it gets to the point where it's really, really terrible. And that's where people decide to get mad enough or decide to be intolerant and do something different. You know, slavery went on for a very long time. And then, you know, it came to a place where people became educated and became smarter and learned how to work together and overcome it. So I just think that with everything, there's always, nothing changes overnight. You know what I mean? You have to get enough people with the like-minded idea and the power and the courage to stand for something different. And I think the election is showing people that the election itself is not all that it stops at. There's a lot more levels to it, but at least that's a start. And I think that with this being, which is sad, with this being such a like a reality show, political type of deal, it's touching people because of the hysteria of it that it would never touch. So at least people who probably never listened before are probably listening and at least thinking about it and having conversations that they may not have previously had.
Eric, to ask you a follow-up question, I'm gonna word it a little different. Number one, are you voting? But number two, do you think this election will make a difference within the Black community? Or do you think it'll be status quo?
I am voting. Early voting starts tomorrow. Me and my wife will be in line. Well, we leave it at the house at 5 tomorrow morning. So we'll be in line to vote. It is important and it does make a difference. And I say that what the Supreme Court did in 2013 in repealing Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act is, to me, in my opinion, the first of many steps to come. So if Trump is reelected, he's going to appoint, as he's already done, I believe it's already 200 or so he's already appointed to the federal bench. And if he gets Barrett on the Supreme Court, as well as possibly another Supreme Court justice, we're going to see a lot of social settled laws repealed. And that is not what the country should be. I mean, we're a diverse population, and settled law should be settled law. We can't tout ourselves as having individual rights and freedoms when individuals appointed on the federal bench or the Supreme Court can bring their religious philosophies and or their personal ideologies that affect millions of lives. So I believe it's definitely makes a difference. We aren't where we should be given the history of this country and what's written on paper, but voting is a step and an only actual tool we have, only non-violent tool we have to actually change the status quo.
I guess I'll go to Warren. Warren, number one, are you voting? Do you think the status quo will change with this vote? Just picking up where Eric left off. Do you think the status quo will change? You're probably close to my age. I think you're like a couple years older than me. But we were in the military together, so we've seen how bad things had gotten in the military when it came to race relations and certain things. But do you think that voting is going to make a difference, and this particular vote will change the status quo?
Well, first of all, I will not be voting this year, simply because 2 weeks ago I dropped my ballot off at the registration office to make sure no malarkey goes on with it. So it is there, it is registered.
You lost me on that, but that means you did.
Well, I've already voted.
Okay, okay.
I won't be voting the rest of this year.
Okay.
Don't anybody take that the wrong way. I got a big mouth when it comes to politics, and you should know I'm not going to sit on the sideline. According to what Eric is saying, I certainly understand. One of our big problems is we have always been very trusting people. You know, we'll give somebody the opportunity to do what they say they're going to do. They don't do it, and often we say, okay, this is something we've probably gotten accustomed to, being misled for so many years. But I am not a Republican, and one of the things that it really gets under my skin with them, but it's a tactic that works, and it works well. Eric was talking about them changing the Voting Rights Act in 2013. Yes, they did. All of that and everything that they've done up to this point was for right now. They took a vote for Supreme Court Justice from Barack Obama, and they got two. Trump already has two, and he's got Amy Coney Barrett about to be confirmed. So everything that they've done in the past was for this day, because they start with a long-term plan to get where they want to be. So if they stack this court, once they stack this court, they can move all of their agenda through with people who believe the same way that they do. And I think far too often we don't follow up with the promises that were made. And I think we need to stay on top of every politician that we ever put in a position, make them accountable to us for the things that they've been promising us for since our existence in this nation. And they fall back on it, and we sit back and say, okay, well, we got to wait for the next one. No, it's time to stand up and start forcing them to follow up with our agendas. And until that happens, I don't know how much is going to change, but it's certainly, I've certainly had enough of it. I don't know how anybody else feels, but far too long. We're missing those elements of consistency. And you know, if it's not gonna happen overnight. Of course, we all know that. I saw a picture a couple weeks ago of an older black lady holding a sign up that said, "Stop police killings." Well, that sign came from 1950, but it's as relevant today as it was back then because nothing has happened. We're going through the same things. And so until we stand up and continue to push these politicians to do what we need them to do to make life better, not only for white folks or the poor, I mean, they are wealthy, but the poor folks, those in the middle class, and everybody who lives in this nation. And so that's where we have to start. And part of that is teaching all of ours, young folks, our children, our nieces and nephews, go to vote. My mother took me when I was 18, and I don't believe I've missed a vote since then. And so I'm always going to make my voice
What is
heard.
that, like 40, 50 votes you've been participating
Well, it's been quite a few of them.
in?
And there'll be, as
You gotta
long as
tell them
God
something,
gives me the
Rene.
breath to continue, I will keep on going. So, yes,
Hey,
absolutely.
hey, Ed, so I'll go with you. Piggybacking
Okay.
on something that
Okay.
Warren said, uh, if everyone goes out and votes, and it's going to come down to the electoral college, doesn't that mean that, number one, make sure you answer if you're voting, but doesn't that mean that potentially everyone goes out and votes and we all agree that, hey, Donald Trump should be out of office, but then the electoral college, based on that system, he still ends up winning the nomination?
It's those key states that you have to make sure that you get out and vote that makes the difference with the electoral college. First off, this thing about I vote all year. My kids vote, push that issue. What Eric said, does voting matter? Okay. Now let me explain. Ask the question: if voting did not matter, why would you have such major voter suppression? Why would you have poll taxes? Why would you have bombings of churches? Why would you have black women's throats cut down in Mississippi, thrown aside the road that was going to register to vote or trying to get people to register to vote if voting did not matter? Wouldn't nobody put that kind of effort out to keep you from voting if voting did not matter? If you understand the history of this country, we are talking about what Rich was saying. The key thing that elevates climate control, climate change, and all that deals with white supremacy. That's the root of it, of everything, the ills on a global scale. European white folks don't care about nothing but money and dominating and so-called power, so they'll destroy the planet just to get a fat pocket. Okay. Do I vote? Yeah, I vote all the time. Voter suppression is the key. Understand what has been taking place. Other thing that has not happened, like Warren said, quid pro quo. We have not demanded politicians to come through after we give them our vote. We act like that's okay. No, it's not okay. It's not okay. And then, then we always hear, well, maybe it's God's will. Well, God's will for who? Is for who? Is God's will that they abuse, rip, steal, murder, destroy, kill the planet? Help me with that. So that's a lot of issues that's come into play that's very complicated. And I don't think this is the correct forum for this, but if anybody wants to sit down and call me and debate and spend some quality time with me, I'll burn both your ears off for a couple hours. But voting is important.
Okay.
And it does make a difference. The key is with electoral college is to make sure that those in those states that can swing the vote, have to swing the election. Those are the key states that we need to get out and vote. And those are the key states like South Carolina or Florida, where they really push voter suppression. Those are the states that they know if they lose, they don't win. Those are the states we need to make sure that everybody gets out and votes and take this thing dead serious.
Abubak, to ask a question based on what Ed and Warren just said, what should number one, did you vote or are you going to vote? And also, what should the ask be? So if Black people, everybody seems to be in agreement, or at least a few people seem to be in agreement, that we do vote and we do expect certain things, but we never get what we expect, then what should the ask be? What should Black people be asking of their politicians?
So first, yes, last week was the early voting in Texas. I was out there 2 hours the first day, and I voted. What should the ask be? I don't think it should be an ask. I think it should be a demand.
Absolutely.
And we've been asking for 50, 60, years, and it's no longer an ask anymore. And the demand should be for something to be done about this economy and how it works and who it works for. I saw a thing, and it may seem slight, and it just may be something that bothered me, but I can't remember actually really right now, I just don't remember the name of the drug, but it had to do with the opioid stuff last week. And the company that was putting out the opioid got fined $80 billion, and the company's forced to close now. And that was, I don't know if anybody else saw that. That was in the news last week.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to me that that came about, considering all the drug problems that we have had in our community over the decades. And now, people are getting rehab and going to therapy and all of that stuff for their issues, but it was nothing that, we asked for it, but it was nothing we ever got. Or I should say, we didn't even know to ask for it. So the demand economy, if you want to make things, fair, the economy, take care of that economy. Take care, help people understand what's going on with this capitalism thing. Yes, capitalism works. It's who it works for, and that's something that we need to understand. The laws are made. The laws are made by people for them, and we have to understand this law and what's going on with this law. And that's what happens with voting, and that's what happens with getting people in there to do things. But again, it's the demand that that people have to do, and the money, because the whole thing about the politics and the economy is the money, right? So we as a people need to understand about this money thing, and understand. The question, it gets kind of deep for me, because it's a psychology, and it's a mass psychology that has been going on for 400 years. So yes, we are in this situation, but after 400 years. We need to start thinking about that sociological Stockholm syndrome that has happened to us. That people, we're all human beings, so we desire to have things and understand how our money gets spent. I remember when the pandemic first started, we talked a little bit about, and this was here in San Antonio, the lines for people to come to get food, and you were seeing some really expensive cars out there to get to get food, for these lines. And just how we spend money, and understand what this economy is, and understand what this money does, and how we need to and I'm even leery to say the word educate, because it's beyond books. It's beyond a book type education that needs to go on. This is a psychology that needs to happen in order for people to try to understand, to reverse basically what has happened to us for 400 years. And I'm saying us, but actually really it's a worldwide problem. It's been going on since the ships started flying across the Atlantic. It was going on before that. And just people need to understand what that history is. And if you want to make this planet and everything else better, start with the people. When I think about it, just, the minds that people have, the minds that I wish we had, all over the planet, how it's disregarded, and we might have billions of geniuses out there that you just don't know because they were never given an opportunity. So that's my take on that. We need to truly demand and understand demand, and I think we've been asking and turning the other cheek for too long.
I go a step further if I can.
Go ahead.
And you say demand, you're absolutely right. We tell these politicians you get one term to show progress. You may not complete your task, but you need to have it in place or you don't get a second term. So start
Absolutely.
from day one, move this thing forward, and then let's make something happen. Give somebody else a chance to pick up the baton and continue. But if you don't make progress in that first term, I'm through with you because I'm tired of being told the same thing constantly.
But doesn't that mean that we'll never see any change? Because
No, it doesn't.
if you give, let's say Joe Biden, since he's the one running, you give Joe Biden one term. Number one, you have to have a platform that everyone agrees what that demand should be. I think we're too fractured to get people to agree that here's a list of demands that we're all going to agree on. So if we can't agree on what those demands are, and then we somehow present what we think those demands are to this, what we're going to consider this potentially this one-term president, if he doesn't meet our demand, that
Okay.
just means that he'll do what he wants to do. And then he'll go away because we won't vote for him again. And then the next guy, or in this case, let's say it's Kamala Harris, she'll do what she wants to do. And then she'll go away because she didn't meet our demands. And then we'll be 20 years from now with nothing done, nothing changed.
I see it
So
differently.
go
I
ahead.
see it differently because right now, what plans do we have on the table? None. Somebody
There's
better
a
put the
platinum plan
plan
on
on
the
the
table.
table. The platinum plan, Donald Trump's plan.
He got Ice Cube to buy in.
Yeah, okay. But if somebody
Straight out
puts
of
the
Compton.
plan on the table, somebody puts the plan on the table and we start working towards that, that's progress. That's something. Right now, we don't have a thing to look forward to or to push us towards that goal of having them serve our needs as well. So you put a
But
plan out there, Joe Biden. Huh? Go
you
ahead.
know, with Martin Luther King, when he was speaking with Johnson, I believe it was, and he was asking or demanding what should be done based on the following that he had. And Johnson said, "Yeah, we'll discuss it, and we're going to take it serious, and we're going to do this." And he didn't follow through on a majority of the stuff that the demands were. And now we're 2020 without a Martin Luther King. So how do we, shouldn't the thing be try and find leaders, even if those leaders are in smaller groups? It doesn't have to be one person, Martin Luther King or Jesse Jackson or Malcolm X speaking for the masses, but shouldn't there be smaller groups of people trying to come together so that we can all make sure we formulate what those demands should be?
Oh, I'd agree. I would definitely agree with that. And it's the same as part of this demand for, Biden and Harris, who they end up putting in the cabinet. And the other Democrats I voted for in here in Texas, who's in the Senate, who's in Congress, who's in your city council, who's on your school board. I mean, actually, I don't have any kids, but I know I'm paying taxes for the school board, So it's like, hey, what's going on with this school, with this school over there? Are these minority kids being taken care of over in what's in the books? I remember a couple of years ago, there was a big thing here in Texas about books that they were trying to ban or not not even publish or not get to. And it's like, oh, you got to be joking me. We got to speak on that. So no, I would totally agree with you. Yeah, there has to be other leaders because, well, then when they take one leader out, and there ain't nobody to back them up. That's the thing, they taking the head of the snake off and stuff, and that's part of it that needs to stop. It needs to be a group of people moving forward on a platform.
So to go back what you said, Abubak, on something earlier, from an economic perspective, what should the economy look like from a Black perspective? Like you said, we spend a lot of money on garbage, hair, nail. I think that read somewhere it was so many billions, $500-600 billion on makeup. It was makeup, hair, nails. It was a bunch of stuff. I know Chris Rock did that movie several years ago.
Yeah.
How do we educate people on the importance of being economically strong as opposed to just being so fractured and everybody spend their money wherever they want to spend it?
Okay, Rene.
Well, when it comes to the school thing, you know, we go to school and we learn math, and don't get me wrong, I like math. I wish I knew it better. You know, I still read up on it, but there's a lot of finance and like home economics class. I don't even know if they still have that,
No.
you know, in school anymore. You got you know, recently, you know, we've been talking about cryptocurrency. You know, do these kids know cryptocurrency? Hell, I don't know cryptocurrency. These are the things that people need to be aware of about what's going on with this economy. They need to be aware that, you know, 25, 30 years ago, a CEO of a company, you know, might have been making 8 times more than the average worker at that company, and now it's like 400 times more. You know, that doesn't really work. And this zero-sum game thing, you know, understand what they're meaning by that, because the pie is not, it's just not one size. It's been getting larger, and we just been getting a smaller piece of it. So, you know, understand what that's about. No, totally agree with you, man. The capitalism, it works, right? But yes, and I'm not talking about no communism thing or nothing like that. I'm just talking about just understanding capitalism. And basically, what I want to say Trump is talking about is actually really fascism. And needing to understand that, and that this is, you know, that this is not working for people who don't invest in what's going on in the United States. The United States was built on the back of slavery. If anybody should have any investment in the stock market, it should be Black people, and we're never taught it, and we need to understand that.
We were the stock market. You know, just piggyback on what you said, Abubakar, on the psychology of this thing, and what Rene was talking about, cosmetics. You guys Google Dr. Amos Wilson. He does a good talk on the psychology of Black folks. The reason we spend so much money on cosmetics, especially our females, is because we've been taught that we aren't beautiful people. We trying to be somebody based on what somebody else said about us. The reason we dress the way we do, look the way we do, we worried about somebody else rather than ourselves. That's the psychological damage. That's why we don't have any money. Is mentally we going down the wrong road. See, when you understand like you said, the what I call post-traumatic slave syndrome, and you mentioned that before, that is so crucial. And people don't even understand that. The average Black person, if you bring that stuff up, they tell you, they look at you, man, you don't know what you're talking about. They so ingrained to the lies and the belief system that white supremacy has put on Black people, on not just in this country, on a global scale. You got Black folks in Africa buying bleaching cream. What the hell is you doing buying bleaching cream in Nigeria? See, because you don't like who you are. You so ingrained to what the colonists, the enslavers have told you who you are, and you have bought the idea that Black is ugly, that you need to look more like them rather than who you are. And that's the biggest problem we have as a people. Until we psychologically understand those things, we believe everything they've told us, from religion, everything that they have given us. They don't even believe in it. If they believed in it, they wouldn't do the things they do. So apparently that's not a viable entity to follow. And everything Black folks in this country, I got a buddy of mine from Nigeria, and he says that Nigerians are worse off than Americans as far as following the colonial aspects of the religious systems, both Islam and Christianity in that country. And what Richard said, talking about famine, there was no famine on the continent of Africa until Europeans came and started controlling the dadgum farmland and the grazing land. Them folks wasn't hungry, going starving, until Europeans showed up and divided the continent up the way they felt it should be divided up, and put this tribe part of this tribe in this so-called country by unnatural borders. How do you get Italy, Spain, France, Germany? Those were natural borders based on the way those people, the language, the cultures. That's what Africa had formed until the council was the year when they divided up, when the Dutch, the French, the English, when they came in and said, well, you take this, we're going to carve this section out and make this Nigeria, we're going to make this, that. Those weren't natural borders. That's why you have all these conflicts, and then they use their favorite playbook is divide and conquer. That's white supremacy's #1 playbook is divide and conquer. So you have black folks on the island. Man, I'm not black. I'm Trinidadian. I'm Jamaican. Man, I'm not. Man, I'm not. I'm from this. I'm from that. No, all y'all are African. But you let these folks tell you something different, so you never get together. That's part of that white supremacy divide and conquer scheme. Until you really dissect this thing and really understand it, then that's when you get to the economics of it, because it's all based on economics. If you keep people scrambling around looking for crumbs, then you run off with the whole pot of gold.
So can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So wouldn't that mean kind of in the sense, whereas that the black race, or the in other words, we need to possibly re-educate. Shouldn't we re-educate starting at a very young age
Absolutely.
our children, our young people, because we can't rely on people my age or older, because they may have been damaged because of what has been instilled into our minds of who we are, and that we are only going to go so far, that we only can go to this side of town, or that don't belong here. And that goes all the way back to those that wrote the laws for this land. We weren't sitting at the table. So it wasn't enough of us. If any of us were sitting at the table to sit there and give our contribution to what the laws should be, when it includes us being considerate of us, it was all white men, basically. So we weren't part of the plan for sitting down, creating laws that are actually for all the people. So in order I don't believe in really segregation, but I almost believe that we got to go, and it's been tried several times and got destroyed. But where you go to our own little space, our own little section, and try to develop our own self, build our own people up, our own wealth, not reaching out for, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, we basically have to start with our young people, teaching them and not relying on their parents or their grandparents, but basically teaching them at a very young age about securing Black wealth, about that you're beautiful, that you have worth, you have a place, you have something to contribute. So we can't rely on past generations to really instill this in our kids, because they're tainted almost.
Can I say something to that real quick, Jasmine? I want you to answer this. What do you think can be done, based on what Stephanie just said, to educate the youth, or do you believe that it has to start with the youth? Still there, Jasmine? Oh, go ahead.
Yes, I think so. The issue with the youth is that everything has to be quick. So I think that the importance of the older generation teaching their children, who are the youth, and having these conversations at dinner time and normalizing it, I think that's the start of it. That will make people, because the youth, they have to understand how it's going to directly affect them. And right now, kind of where they are, they don't feel, or wherever stage they are, I'm not saying all youth, but a lot of times they don't associate anything with themselves or give interest if it doesn't directly impact them. So I think probably from the older generation to explain that all of the ways in which this doesn't affect you now, but there are second and third order and fourth order effects that will directly correlate to you. So I think the biggest thing is showing them that it is directly impacted, will directly impact them, and that it's important to them. But just how they will get that information is a difficult, I think a difficult task.
That was my next question. And I'm a firm believer that we have to educate kids, because it's going to sink in faster. And if they gravitate to it, then the long-term effect is much greater than if we're educating people that are our age. But I do believe that the kids, as what Jasmine just said, you can spend a lot of time trying to talk to them, but if you can't reach them, then you're going to waste time. Whereas if you spend time trying to get people like that, like us, on these calls, then basically people our age, they're going to take it and try and run with it. The youth, they're going to take it and start tweeting about it. And yes, it may have some, and everybody's going to have some nice sayings, and they're going to post a picture of what they saw and different things. But I don't know that this particular generation of youth is actually going to do anything with it. So that being said, if they aren't going to do anything with it, then how do we educate people that are older? And what should the step be? Should we start with Zoom meetings? Should it be, obviously we have the pandemic going on, so nobody's around, but Avon was really successful with getting small groups of people basically in a living room and talking about its product. Should it be something like that? Or should we think that we're going to get somebody like Eric, who's what, 45, 48, 49, 50, somewhere around there. We're going to get somebody like Eric to basically buy into what needs to happen, what should be happening, and then try and get him to sign on to a Zoom meeting and take time out of his day to start affecting change. What, Richard, from your perspective, should that focus be on the younger generation, or should it be on the people that are actually going to put their feet to the pavement and actually start doing something, as opposed to the people that are going to put their thumbs to the keyboard and start talking, tweeting about it?
I want to say something on back of what you were just saying.
Go ahead, Jasmine.
I want to say, I think that when I say that people need to understand how relative it is to them, I will say that me personally, I'm 33 years old and I've been in the military for 10 years. And I think that growing up in a military environment and in a very diverse population, I think that, not that I didn't believe that it was this bad, the racism. I think probably, to be honest, I probably just wasn't educated enough and to really understand the slide comments or the undertone. And so it's interesting that probably over the last year and some change, that now I feel like that I'm more aware. I'm realizing that probably, and it could be because now I'm coming into a different rank where it is exposing me to a different management level, where typically that population of people is not African American. There's not a lot of African American women officers. And so I think that it is way more blatant. I think the biggest thing is education. And I think that people have to see it. And I think it definitely has made a significant difference. And I didn't understand the gravity. I think that if you're born in a later generation, you have a little bit closer of a tie to it. And you can, you're either your mother or somebody like that. And me and my dad had a conversation about it. And I was like, we didn't grow up like this. And he said, well, yeah, it's just where we were and all of that stuff. So it kind of just, I think that is definitely important. But I definitely see it now, and I feel it. And I think that people are a lot more vocal and they feel a lot more comfortable speaking in a manner that they've never spoken before.
Richard, did you want to answer the original question? You think it's important to go after the youth and try and educate the youth to affect change? Or do you think we should be going after the older generation?
The obvious answer is that you need to do both. But where should the focus be, if there needs to be a focus? I think that short term, you need to focus on people that are going to be the most effectual. And I think that's the people that are already involved in voting. And I think that needs to be the first thrust, to try to get that to be as robust as possible. As far as the youth go, there are so many things that are trying to grab their attention. I think that there is a big problem with what the youth think is the good stuff. I think that there's a problem with a feeling of being connected and a feeling of community and like that. So for me, I guess I'd answer the question with the question also, which is, what is it that you're trying to communicate to them? Are you trying to just, get a group of young people together and tell them it's really important to vote? Well, that's not going to get anything. They're not going to, they're going to laugh. But if you are doing things in the community that are building the community and giving them a sense of purpose and giving them a sense of place, and they can feel like they belong to something, then I think that you get more participation from them. So I think that it's how they're approached and what the actual questions are that are being asked, and what's the how are you going to go about it. So I think that there are a lot of youth that are already involved, and it seems that from what I'm reading, that like my son's generation, they're more, and he's like around 30 now, so they're a little less inclined to be involved. But the people, what I'm reading is that the kids that are 15 through 22, 24, something like that, they're actually really concerned because they're looking at, the future.
Exactly.
And they're actually, they actually are becoming more involved. So the question,
Yes.
so yeah, the question is, how do we identify what is of concern to people? Because you can't convince somebody to be concerned about something that they don't feel affects them. So how do you get there from here? And I also have to think, like, one of the reasons that Black Lives Matter and this whole thing took off is because, one of the reasons is because, a very brave football player put his knee on the ground. So, and then people looked up to that. And then that guy didn't just do that as a matter of ego. He's one of the most visible and one of the greatest leaders in his community. So that's just an amazing thing. And that's what needs to be done. And so what's hard for me, and I think it's cross cultural. But I think that the idea that the culture is based on basically greed and consumerism. That sounds like, well, Richard, you're kind of getting off task, but no, that actually is the problem, because there is a lack of sense of belonging. And so there are people in various communities that end up, doing very well, leaving whatever community they're from. And then the example to the people that are left behind is, wow, when you make it, you leave and you buy yourself 14 of the most expensive cars you've ever seen in your life. And you buy yourself a 17,000 square foot mansion. So the question is, and again, this isn't, what's that?
I said, don't forget the white woman. You got
Right.
to do all
Yeah,
that.
you got right. You're so right. You got to get yourself all the trophies. And then when you have all the trophies, then you're the big winner. And that is what the youth is after. So I just hired a young Hispanic guy, Andy. He's pretty smart kid. He's pretty smart, but he has many of the same trappings. He shows up with a new freaking cap every day. He's got the brand new shiny baseball cap. He's got nice clothes on, nice shoes on. He's living in an apartment with 5 people. And I tell him, Andy, like, if you just, I'm starting to work with them. Like, if you just don't buy a hat every week, put that into the bank and like that. But what he sees is that. And, he wanted to have a good time. It was his birthday. So he wanted to have a good time. So he and his friends were looking at trying to find a really nice Airbnb to buy, not to buy, but to, rent for the night. And they were looking at like a mansion in Bel Air with a view of the ocean. They were going to rent it for 2 days for $6,000. But then they could have all their buddies over, right? They have everybody there. They're living large, at least. And this is the thing.
2 days.
This is really the thing. They want to live large because that's what they're being taught. That's what they're being taught.
But it's not as, it is a teaching, because if I watch something over and over, and Ed has said this many times,
Absolutely.
TV programming for a reason, but it is a teaching, but it's more back to your point of feeling like they belong. Because the more I do this and I blow my money, the more followers I get, the more likes I get. Now I belong to something much bigger, because people think that the youth won't get involved, but the involvement that they need to actually or the issues that they need to get involved in are as simple as if they were to all get in as part of a flash mob. It's almost the same thing. They're going to spend a little bit of time. They're going to basically go march, go do something, go vote, go whatever it is. It doesn't actually require a lot of their time. But how do we communicate what that involvement should be? That's where I think we struggle, is what you think like you said, climate change is the most important thing there is that's basically on this ballot. But that's not what Eric believes. That's not what I believe. Warren believes it's economics. So how do we, all of us, sit down, pick one issue and make that the issue? And if we struggle with, 11 people on the call to do that, how do you do it with millions of people?
Because you don't actually choose one. That's a false choice. You don't have to choose one. I think that people are smart, that they can hold multiple ideas in their head at one time. So I think that you can lay out an agenda on what are the important things, but you can't have the dialogue with them until they're in the room. So how do you get them in the room? And how you get them in the room is by engaging with them and trying to get them doing things and becoming a part of something that they also, not that they feel like is an obligation, but something that they want to do. How do you get them to want to do it? Not how do you get them to do what they need to do? How do we change these youth? These youth don't care. No, like, what do they care about? What's their issue? What's their problem? What do they want to do? And how do you acknowledge what they want to do and then try to engage with them in what they want to do? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Eric.
Stephanie keeps trying to chime in. I want to hear what she has to say.
Oh yeah, go.
Stephanie, were you going to say something?
Who is that?
You. Were you going to say something about that?
Oh, no. I mean, I could, but no, I wasn't trying to.
Okay, Eric, what's your take on that? If an agenda is put together, how do you get mass participation amongst the youth and the older people? Is it by having multiple things or topics that will be relevant to multiple people? Or is it a single focus? I mean, when there was the Occupy Wall Street, there was a single focus of that. There was too much economic inequality. I remember sitting on a flight with a woman, and she happened to be in first class. I happened to be in first class. And she told me she was flying to New York because of Occupy Wall Street. And I told her, but this is the very thing that you're going to protest against. And she says, yeah, I don't know that I want to go now, after sitting in first class for 5 hours. So, Eric, should it be a single agenda? Should it be multiple issues that are raised? Or should we just say it's multiple issues and we're going to go after the youth because the adults in the room aren't prepared to do anything, or vice versa? What's your take on that, Eric?
Well, I think in the last debate, Biden said it, that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think all of their separate issues, but they're all correlated and they're intertwined. I mean, if you talk about economics, then you're also talking about the environment. If you're talking about that, you're talking about big industry and where they're located and who the spill off or the pollution directly affects. And it's usually brown and black folks primarily, or those in lower income areas. And those industries come in those locations for a reason, because they're vulnerable and they don't have a voice. So I think you can do more than one thing at one time, but ultimately all of them have an impact of affecting all of us. I think the older folks are needed. Some have forgotten in some aspects. I think maybe a generation ago they understood delayed gratification. Then a generation kind of maybe got either sidetracked or just felt that I need to fully assimilate, don't fight the powers that be, and just try to get mine. And everybody else need to worry about themselves, because when we come together collectively, then we're attacked. the younger folks need the older folks support, and the older folks need to be reminded of where they came from and who came before them in the fight that they engrossed themselves in. So it's twofold. One can't exist without the other, and one can't succeed without the other.
Old folks
I
need
agree
more
with
life.
Eric. That's very good.
Abubak,
I
let me
agree.
ask this question. Do you agree that we can, as the masses, obviously there are certain people that can, but the masses, do you agree we can walk and chew gum at the same time, that we can hold multiple thoughts about these problems and these issues? Or do you think it needs to be more of a singular focus?
I wouldn't say singular focus, but I wouldn't say multitasking either, because we know multitasking doesn't work. And as far as who you approach, it's just that you'd have to be approaching people in a different way. So somebody mentioned earlier, the older people are maybe in a better position to do things. And what I find with youth, and just might be just my theory, is that youth needs to be challenged, and they lack that right now. But that's the confidence builders. So it's about giving them and showing them, giving them opportunities to do things and to build on those things to help them build confidence. Now, I think that could start at different ages. But again, it still comes back to, older people who are in a position to do stuff, because then they're models, or they could become models. I would like to see some older people do more stuff like that, because even the older people, we're not dogs. You could learn new tricks. I know I'm retired. I really didn't want to work too much. I did my time, as far as I'm concerned. But hey, we still learn. We can still do some things, and that's my take on it. There's a couple different things we need to do. It may not have to be so spread out, but it doesn't have to be so singular either. We need to approach everybody. And I'm a retired IT manager, all right? And I'm going to be the first one to tell you, be very leery about IT. I know I am. However, I don't think Obama would have gotten to where he was without a lot of IT. I think the IT thing is here, and it depends on how you use it. Same like capitalism. It depends on how you use it. And that's what we have to approach now, because there's not going to be a whole lot of people getting in a lot of groups now to do anything. This pandemic changed up a whole lot of that stuff. I mean, I know I don't even want to I don't even want to be around a whole lot. I've been doing good. I do my thing on the side and, by myself outside, but I'm not in a group with a whole lot of people. But we could use this medium. We need to find a way to use this medium. Kids are all on top of it. I mean, a lot of us are older people, and we're on here doing Zoom and finding out how to do Zoom and how to do this, how to look at the news. A very simple thing is about how to look at news. I'll be the first one to tell you. I look at MSNBC, but I got to change over to Fox every now and then just to hear what the hell they're saying. I'll go out on the internet and I'll look at Al Jazeera and BBC and whatever other news I find. I-24 News. These are the things we have to be critical about. We got to teach the youth and challenge them to be critical thinkers. The same like we got to teach older people that we are already critical thinkers. We got as far as we did by having to put together some kind of stuff to get where we are nowadays. Even the ones that ain't doing so good, hey, you got to get by, and when we were younger, we got by on this and they're getting by on that. And it's like, hey, maybe we could help these communities out. This was one of the things we talked about with 400 Black Dollars. We're trying to help these communities. There's not a lot of kids out here buying houses or even being taught to. There's youth. There's maybe some 20, some 30 years old, that should be looking at, how to get a house, and we'll could educate them. But these are the things that we need to approach everybody. It can't be that spread out. but it can't be singular. Everybody's not going to get on the same thing. Everybody's not at the same place. There's different levels for everybody.
So Warren, let me
Rene.
ask this question.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Now, I was just gonna say, yeah, because I kind of remember. I don't know if I'm the oldest one on this call.
I doubt it.
Well, I'm 67, so I don't know. But
Yes.
the thing is, I remember like when we used to be in school, how in certain classes they would put you into groups, and it would be small groups within the classroom, and each group worked a certain way or worked on a certain thing. And that's what I kind of like when Eric said about you're including everybody. You have to let the older generation know that they may have gotten weary. They may have fallen into the idea that they have done all they can do, and let them know, no, there's still more you can do. It's still more you can add to the equation. It's still, you have a place. And that encourage the older generations to help encourage and support the younger generations, but also letting the younger generation know that you have ideas, you have a vision, you have a goal, you can add to this universe, and you can bring something that we don't see, or we don't, that the elders don't see, or are not going in a direction. In other words, I've heard a lot of young people say, "We're tired. You guys have been talking about the older people. You guys have been talking about it for a long time. We're starting to take some action." Okay, let's take action. Okay, we support you. We encourage you in that. But it's finding. I don't think it's going with one idea, but it's not going with 50 ideas, but it's getting a sizable, maybe 5 areas of discussion, and that individual groups work on. And I believe, like Eric said, it all ties into one to the other. So when you talk about economics, when you talk about the matters that involve civil rights or people's rights, I should say, then it all ties together. So when you got a group here working on this, whether it be a couple of elders and a few youth, getting them engaged or getting them involved, because they don't want to do nothing unless like it's got to be instant. Like they're getting them involved, getting them to work, to plan, to think about, getting them actually involved in the situation. And it's taking those small groups and now working towards the idea that group over here that's working on this, we all are trying to intertwine. So it all works together. So how do we work it so that it's just like a circle, so that it all works around to each other, to each individual thing, whether it's economics, whether it's people's interests, whether it's you know what I'm saying, to where it affects everybody, where it's not just talking about what's beneficial for the white man or the brown man, but it's beneficial for all people. And so I think that it's just really like this really engaging in ideas and putting people together to work together. But the youth, we have to encourage the youth, and then we have to be encouraged by the youth that they believe that we all have something to bring to the table.
But isn't it, I'm a firm believer that a lot of our problems in this country began when we start saying, don't talk about race, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics. We started restricting what we can talk about.
That was done intentionally. I'm
That
dead
was
serious. That was done intentionally. No, that was done intentionally. It was done intentionally. Don't talk about religion because for obvious reasons there. And then don't talk about money. You can't talk about money. That was absolutely the idea that the other thing you can't talk about, charity. Everybody, I don't know, I imagine people on this call are charitable. But if I were to say, tell me about your charities, and don't tell me about the charity, tell me how much money you gave to charity last year. Everyone gets a little bit, oh, hey, you're getting in my business. But without being able to speak, you then don't have there is no standard. So what is the standard for giving? The Catholic Church set it up at 10%. Okay, well, that's fine. That's good for them. But there is no other standard. Anyways, I kind of got off on that tangent there, but it kind of does bring me around to what I'm coalescing as I'm listening to this. And that is, my thought is, you don't try to teach. That sounds crazy, right? Don't try to teach anybody. Care about people. Start there. Start caring about people and figuring out how you can care about them. When people understand that someone cares about them, that changes everything. I'll go back to my example with my young man, Andy, who just started with me a couple months ago. We're in here, we're talking, and somebody else brought up Bitcoin, right? So I've got a little Bitcoin. Renee's still got a bunch of Bitcoin. And it's an interesting thing. So Bitcoin went up and I said, hey man, take a look at this. And I brought him around to my desk. I showed him the Bitcoin and all the charts and stuff like that. And I said, yeah, this is something that's happening and blah, blah, blah. And then we started talking about investments. I said, so how much money do you put away? And he just kind of looked at me like I was crazy. But what happened, the reason that we could have the conversation about finances isn't because I said to him, Andy, are you investing your money? You sure should be. What are you doing with your money? Instead, I said, what's going on, Andy? Tell me about your life. What are you doing? And then as I cared about him, he came back the next day and he said, hey, I was thinking about what you said about investing and stuff. I'd really like to start doing some of that stuff. And it wasn't because I told him what he should be doing. I just said, what are you doing? And I cared about him. About a week and a half later, we continued to have these kind of conversations. When he came to work for me, I said, Andy, what's going on? So you're a high school graduate? Oh, no, I didn't get the high school thing. I dropped out, this and that. I say, Andy, what you got to get, go back to school. You got to get your GED, go ahead and do that. And that's part of you working for me now. You're going to try to figure that out. And I said, what's going on with your bank? I don't have a bank, this and that. Okay. So the other thing you're going to do is you're going to get a bank account. And so I started helping him with his life. About a week and a half later, he stopped in the middle of my driveway, turned around, he said, Richard, he said, I can't go one more day without telling you, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate the conversations you've been having with me. No one in my life has had these conversations with me.
That's true.
23-year-old.
People don't, I'm not to cut you off, but people don't take an interest in helping people.
They don't. And this is, I would say, of all the conversation, if you want to affect everything, climate change, you want to affect race relations, you want to affect everything, figure out how to care for people. And I know that sounds, It just sounds like this big weird thing. What do you mean? How do you care for people? You simply take the organization that we're talking about building, but instead of saying, how do we teach the youth? You have a little bit different take on it. How do we care about them? Now, in that caring is going to come teaching, mentorship. Other things are going to come out of that structure. But you start with, how are you? How is your life? What is going on with you? What do you know? What don't you know? Engaging, and then after the engagement, working towards these other goals. So the bottom line for me is, it sounds completely namby-pamby or whatever. Pick some words you want. It sounds insane, but that is where you start. You start by the people, every person you come in contact with, whether it's the grocery store gal or it's the guy pumping your gas or whatever, you care about people. Amen. And I think that's one of the problems that I see in our society in general, is that everyone's like, well, I got mine. I'm good. I got mine. And if the mentality is I've got mine and the neighbor doesn't matter, or my kids, you can go all the way to here. And this is tough. I think a lot of people here have children. Are your neighbor's kids, are they as important as yours? Most people are just immediately going to say they're not. No way. Hey, are you kidding me? This is my family. Of course, these are the most important people. Well, that's fine. I can understand the kind of hierarchy there, but you gotta be concerned about your neighbor's children. I mean, I'm not a religious guy. I think there are the preponderance of people on this call, I think are more religious than me. You kind of must be. But the point is that's the core. That's where Jesus starts. That's where he starts his game. care about people. So that seems to me like a really good way to go. So what does it mean when you care about people? Well, you care about them. You start a clinic in their neighborhood. You care about them because now there's somebody place for them to go and to get their stuff, to get checked up, to make sure that they're doing okay. You care about people. And that's, I think, where you start. And then the dialogues all come from there. And then you also become fairly unassailable. This is the other part. So if you're doing these things to care, then when people are trying to tear you down from what you're doing, because that will always happen. There'll always be attacks and people saying you're doing it for your own reasons. Well, if you are, then that's going to come out. But if you're doing it because you care and you get that philosophy to get the community and all of the communities to be thinking, it's not just about me, man. It's not about me. It's about everybody. How can we all improve? As soon as you get that mindset, then all of this other stuff just starts to fall in line.
I think that's a sales philosophy.
I'm a salesman. Hello.
Most people may not know this, but there's a saying that in order to sell John Smith what John Smith buys, you must see John Smith through John Smith's eyes.
Right.
So, and it's the same concept, right? So if I start to engage with you and understand what ails you, then I can start to speak to, hey, you know what? You're not investing, you're spending your money on hats, to use your example. Maybe you should be doing this, or did you know about Bitcoin, or did you know about these other things? And most people, especially younger people, I think people in general, never have anyone take interest in what they want to do. I was on the phone this morning with a person, I'm helping them build their business. And I explained to her, every time we've been on a call together and we engage a prospect, as they say, you show up and throw up. You immediately start telling them how great your company is and how they need to be doing this and how they need to be doing that. At no point do you ask them questions. But I read somewhere that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, so we can listen twice as much as we talk. But most people don't do that. Ed, you were about to say something about what Richard was saying, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, you said no?
That was me.
Oh, that was you, Eric. Go ahead. My bad. Go ahead.
No, and I agree with Richard. And I think it really revolves back to what Richard said as well, is that this is all planned. All this boils down to control of information. None of these conversations that Richard is having with his young mentee would have needed to take place if our system was actually geared to producing productive and diverse citizens. Our country is built on greed and capitalism, and that greed and capitalism is to be in the hands of a few, not all. So if you control the education, and it's supposed to be public school education, then you should be producing the next generation of a diverse body of professions. They choose not to do that. And so, unfortunately, the way we're structured as far as a country, we're structured and we have succumbed to the belief of rugged individualism.
Right.
So
that's what needs to be changed.
In the era I think most of us grew up in, we knew who our neighbors were. Yeah. Our parents knew who our neighbors were. Our parents told our neighbors' parents or the neighbors, you see little Johnny or little Eric doing something wrong, you whip his butt, you call me, and I'll whip his butt. And then now we have a community. We don't have that anymore. And that was done for a purpose, because that community also affected the local school and what was being taught. Somewhere along the line, and growing up here in the DMV, in DC, I've always questioned how winning school systems are in our neighboring counties, whether it be Virginia or Maryland, but DC kind of struggles. But you look at the school board, it's predominantly, and actually it was all Black folk, educated Black folk. How are they approving a curriculum for the next generation of teachers, doctors, lawyers, plumbers, what have you? Someone has bought in to basically a controlled curriculum to produce a generation of second-class citizens, service-oriented citizens. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a control of information. I was just having this conversation with my son. He's 12, and I refer to the TV as the idiot box. And I explained to him,
you sound like my dad.
It is more difficult for you than it was for me growing up, and I understand that. And as your father, I have to make sure you understand you can come to me and talk about anything, because you are bombarded with information more so than I was. We had maybe 5 stations, 4, 5, 7, 9, 45, maybe 25. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got the world. You can see what's going on in any part of the world, and you got a constant flooding of imagery. And I think someone mentioned that our athletes and our entertainers, they make it out of the hood, they buy the big house, and most of the black men end up with someone who doesn't look like them. That's all imagery, and that is the control of information.
But to go,
we got to compound that. We got to, and it's us as far as the generation educating and make the younger generation aware of how they're being attacked and influenced that they aren't even aware of.
Right.
To go to your example real quick though, Eric, is it a matter of, and Ed, I'm gonna ask you, or actually I'll ask Warren this, is it a matter of buy-in or fear? Like you said, someone sitting on the education council and they're basically approving along with everyone else. To piggyback off of what Jasmine said as well, as she makes the ranks up the food chain, she realizes there's no one in that room that looks like her, or maybe there's 1 or 2 out of who knows how many. I know I've been at conferences and being the keynote sometimes, it was 2,500 people and there might have been 10 people, maybe 20 in the room that look like me. So is it conformity or is it fear that if I do speak out and say I'm against this curriculum, I may lose my job?
Fear.
Go ahead. What'd you say, Ed?
I say fear. There's only 2 things that really that drive people, and it's love and fear. Fear generates jealousy, insecurity, all the negative stuff you get comes out of the emotion of fear. Whether it's white supremacy, all that comes out of fear. I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that, and that generates those issues. And like Rene, I worked in the corporate structure before I got into the public side, and I'd be the only black guy in the room. I know exactly what you're talking about. So I understand those issues, but the reality is, we talking about educating and reaching young folks. It's a process, and we can't give up on them. We can't give up on ourselves. Like Stephanie said, she's one of the elder statespersons on this call, and so am I. And I tell my son all the time, I don't have a lot of time left. I'm in the 4th quarter. Right. I don't know whether I'm in the beginning of the 4th quarter or close to the end. So whatever time I got left, it's to pour into everybody behind me. Rene knows I'll type a long thing and I'll send it out via text message to all the guys in my son's age bracket. I'm constantly dumping information all the time, and I get feedback from them on a consistent basis. Because this is where I am intellectually and mentally. All the stuff I read and study, sometimes I sleep in the middle of the night. I don't sleep. And people always say, man, when do you sleep? My brain never shuts off. And I keep a notebook by the bed. I'm jotting down stuff as fast as it comes to me in the middle of the night. I'm writing stuff down. That's just where my brain operates. But then I share all that with anybody I can, especially folks younger than me, the young brothers and sisters. I'm constantly dumping on them because it's information that they may not grasp now, but a year from now, 5 years from now, the circumstance or a situation comes up, then they'll have that in the box to pull. But if you never put nothing in the box, there's nothing to take out of the box.
Right.
So for the sake of time, I'm gonna give everybody an opportunity, 1 minute. I don't know if you want to say anything about anything we talked about the upcoming election. It's whatever you want. But I'll start with Eric. Eric, what closing points, how you want to close?
Yeah, I think we're all cognizant of what we're dealing with and what the next generation has to deal with. I think that's just the key, is just awareness and passing that information on. I talked about my son. I think Rene and us and myself were probably the younger of the parents as far as the age of the children we have. But I tell my son all the time is, don't be afraid to talk to me, because I learn from you, because you have eyes that I don't. You're seeing things that I may not see, or may be seeing things I may have forgotten about. And that sparks a conversation where both you and I are learning. So it's an exchange of information. Nothing he says is beneath me or not important. It's all important, and vice versa. So I think we as a people, and we as so-called Americans, the last 3 years really has exposed us as a country. And essentially, the world has really seen we're pretty fraudulent.
Pretty well.
Donald Trump has allowed all of our weaknesses, all of our hypocrisies to be exposed, and our vulnerabilities, because of greed, not of a collective ideal of Americanism, for whatever that means, but greed, isolationist, individualism, all of that is causing us collectively to suffer, and it's all rolling downhill.
Abubak.
Let's take these last 4 years as an opportunity. People are supposedly woke right now, and we already know we got the ball, and we got to keep this thing going. Let's take this as an opportunity to try to wake up as many people as we possibly can, and move forward and demand and stay on top of things this time, instead of just taking this, who we voted for and how we voted, and it's like, okay, we got our person in, and then let them slide. I think Juan was talking earlier about staying on top of our elected officials. That's one thing. And again, talking to the youth, and talking to our cohorts, talking to our colleagues, talking to our friends. Hey, this is what's going on. Let's stay on top of it. We saw what happened the last time this man got voted in. We saw what's been going on for the last 4 years. This is no joke. It's not he got in there, and it just exemplifies the state that this country is in. And we gotta stop this. After 400 years, we gotta stop this. That's all I gotta say.
Warren.
No, I certainly agree with that. And yeah, absolutely. It's time for us to put our foot down and try to make some things happen. I guess I'm backtracking a bit, but I am absolutely determined that this man needs to go. I'm not sure if we've already lost health care, but for me personally, having over $1 million in surgeries to keep me here, my insurance is pretty good, but everybody deserves that. And we need people who are going to look out for other people, instead of folks who are making sure that corporations' bottom line is the only thing that matters. And as a business owner, of course, what they're trying to do certainly helps me, but when it hurts other people, that's not a strong enough point for me to vote that back in office. As far as helping our youth, one of the things, Rene, that you brought to my house with me, you, and Ed was that game, and I wanted to know the name of that. Do you remember that game?
Cash flow. I was just playing that last night.
Cash flow?
We were playing it last night. Me, my father, and my son.
Okay. All right. And for anybody who hasn't heard of it, it's a fantastic way to start sitting down with youth and letting them know some of the best ways to invest in life, invest in themselves, and start putting themselves in a position to prepare for the future. And so that's one of the things I want to get. COVID is kind of stopping the families from coming together right now. But I'm going to order that because I want it on standby. Because I've got several nieces and nephews who need to start thinking that way. And I don't know if they've ever been introduced to it, but it's certainly an eye opener. And so that's one of the things I'm looking forward to. Please get out and vote if you haven't. And let's make sure we change the direction of this nation.
Richard?
There's no question we should all get out and vote. That's pretty straight. As far as everything we've spoken about, I think that I think that the idea of how to communicate with the youth is maybe the most interesting and maybe the most important into the future. How do we engage with them, and how do we show them that we care about them? And then how do we use that to, to get them to care about each other? I mean, I think that's the biggest task. As far as, I've been reticent to say this, but I'm gonna throw it out there now, which is I think that there is that we need to understand that the social strife of the Black community is tied into the social strife of the underclasses. I think that there are more. I believe that there are more white poor people in the country than Black poor people in the country. The battle between wealth and poverty, and the people with power and money and the people that provide the services and make the goods, goes back before 400 years. It's been going on for a long, long time. I know that the focus of our group is the Black community, and I'm not trying to dilute that focus, but what I'm saying is that I think that sometimes that is seen as a monolithic struggle, and that diminishes the power of the struggle. There is a larger struggle having to do with the 1% trying to keep down everybody else. So I really believe that's something that should be part of the mix. Is not, we're going to keep that focus, and in this group I don't need to ever talk about this again. But I believe that that as long as that monolithic struggle is seen that way, that it loses power, because it really is a struggle that's been going on for millennia, for 2,000 years. So it started before slavery, and it's going to continue after slavery. It has to do with the people in power controlling and dominating the people that are not in power. And slavery is obviously, and the 400 years that we've experienced in the last 400 years are one of the most glaring examples of it. But when we talk about how are we going to change society, we're not going to change society by simply focusing on the Black community in a larger sense. That's not to say that a particular group shouldn't do exactly that. I'm just saying that mentally we should understand, or my concept of it is that there's a bigger struggle going on, and it has to do with the 1% trying to keep their thumb on everybody else. And of course, when people don't look like you, that's certainly the easiest way to make sure that you keep your thumb on them. Anyways, so that's my two cents on that. I hope that that's not offensive for anybody here. And we didn't touch on generational wealth. I think that's obviously really important, and I think that that's part of that reaching out to the youth, because that's the other thing that connects with them. Is when I talked to Andy about his future, that's when he actually started to have more respect for me and listen to me. But when I talked to Andy about whether or not he did his job that day, was he on time, and all that other stuff that I need to talk with him about, he's engaged, but it's not the same. As soon as I asked him about his future and I cared about his future, that's when he got really engaged. I guess that's good for me. I got, I could go on for hours, but.
All right. Jasmine?
So I guess I'll kind of go back to kind of a little bit what we were talking about, but I feel like a lot of this we were talking about the, African-American culture, but I think we have to also do a little self-inspection and self-reflection and understand that too, as a culture, we are definitely of the mindset of we focus on ourselves. And if I get in the room, I'm just happy and blessed to be in the room. And I'm so uncomfortable to really, I don't want to let anybody else in, because I'm the one Black person or whoever is allowed at the table. And the reality of the situation is you get in the room and they're allowing you in the room, but they don't actually allow you to speak. And it's considered a privilege for you to be in the room. And what we need to kind of shift our mindset into thinking is the more people we can get into the room, the more right we have of having a conversation. I feel like we don't do, as Black people, not all, but significantly, we don't do a good job keeping the door open and letting somebody else in. We kind of get in and we're like, okay, I made it and that's it. And we're so scared to, we think that we are blessed to be in the room or, it's a privilege, but I mean, it is our right if we are educated and we have the appropriate, credentials and we have the experience and the knowledge. And I think that is definitely what makes it a little bit difficult. We do come together when it's necessary, but at the fundamental core of it, if somebody offered them something different, say, I'm gonna give you $500,000 to do this, a lot of us would leave the cause and go for that. And so I just think the culture in general, we have to be realistic about that and be honest with ourselves that we sometimes are, crab in a barrel a little bit as well. And then also to thinking about the aspect of just like being in the room and being in the room and not speaking is worse than being outside the room, because at least you don't have a choice or you don't have a voice or an option, but being in the room and not speaking is definitely a difficult thing. And I think that also we had this conversation. We did a lot of military stand down days when this came out. And we talked about, we also have to be cognizant of how we're communicating. I think that there is something to be said about the years of history that we've had, but in order to communicate in this time, we can't lead with anger. We can't lead with rage. We have to be able to educate people in a way that they feel comfortable asking questions, that they feel comfortable to say, hey, I don't know if this is offensive, but we get so in a world where we're so angry and aggressive. And I think that plays into what they've created us to be, like, the angry Black person, the statement that they say. So just how we deliver the message when we get people to sit down and talk is as important as well. And I don't know that we necessarily really focus on that or really think about if somebody's yelling something at you or being aggressive with something at you, how is anybody going to take it regardless of whatever the issue is? So just random.
Okay.
That's all.
Stephanie, did you want to say something?
I just want to say that, voting is important. So let's all take that step in voting. I wouldn't want men like John Lewis, who is no longer here, to have lived this life for nothing. I agree with, his cause and for the right for us to have what we have the right to have. And so I just want us to always remember every day to try to lift each other up and encourage one another. And I'm not saying you have to necessarily come out of your pockets and hand anybody anything if that's a problem for you, but just to encourage each other and to lift each other up, and that not to give up on us. And when I say not to give up on us, it's not just Black people, but not to give up on us as a people. We're intelligent beings. We can figure this out. If we work together, we can get to a place that we can make it better. And that and the way we do that is by showing genuine care and concern for one another. And so if we start with our babies and work our way up, any baby that you see, any young child that you see, they might be in a neighborhood that is considered to be raunchy in the hood, but all you got to do is tell a young lady that's trying to, a little baby girl that everybody's showing her how to twerk or whatever, baby, you're better than that. Baby, young ladies don't do that. In other words, we can be a vessel to impute into a person's spirit or soul, into a person's spirit, that they can be more than what they have shown or more than what they're around. And so just lift each other up and encourage each other, but show genuine care, because people know when you're showing that you care or have concern, if it's real or if it's fake.
Yeah.
Absolutely, everybody vote. I've already voted, so I'm not even worried about my ballot. Been in, I went online and checked. They said my ballot was in. It's going to be counted. All that. That's what Richard talking about, the global aspect of things. There's a book called The Committee of 300. Read that book. You'll talk about the whole economic aspects on a global scale, and the families that actually run the entire globe. It's not that many. It's about 300 to 400. You got the banking families, the Rothschilds, and so forth. So a lot of people don't even understand those economics aspects of it. And what Stephanie was saying about, I want to touch on this thing about twerking and all that crazy stuff. During slavery, just real close, Black people have lost the aspect of understand what intimacy is, because there was none. The slave master can go in and use the woman like he wanted. He created the Black man just to be a slave and perpetuate to be a stud. And so we have incorporated, once again, what someone else has said, who we are and what we're about, into our lifestyle. And we live it as if that's our culture. No, it's not. That's what we've been told, what we've been instructed, what we've been conditioned to think about ourselves. And so we have to re-educate, refocus. And a lot of, like I said, I'll say this all the time, Black folks need to turn their televisions off, because it reinforces all the lies that those in power, the 1%, has been saying about you, and you live according to what you see.
Yeah.
Leave it at that.
Okay.
If I can jump in really quickly, I actually didn't get to say one thing that I wanted to say before, and it ties right into that. And that is that media, when I get asked, and I have been asked a number of times from younger people, we get into these exchanges about what's to be done or whatever. I always say that the media is the number one place that they should spend their time. That actually is the biggest problem we have right now. And so that's pretty much what you just said, was that, what people are seeing, that's it. A child is formed up, they say now, psychologically. A parent has given everything that they give to their child by the time that child is 7 years old. And from 7 years old on, it is the society and the inputs that they are getting that are coming at them. Their kids, their friends start to teach them a lot more than their parents do. And the society and the television and media are completely forming them after they're 7 years old. So you have till 7, and then you're done. And then however the society is or whatever you're putting them in, that's how they'll be raised. So media is extremely, extremely important, and maybe the thing to focus on more than any other thing.
That's a difficult thing to do, far as stripping media away from, especially the younger generation, even the older generation. I mean, getting people to get up and actually move and exercise and do stuff is a hard thing to do. I think this was the first of what I consider to be many discussions about what's happening in our societies, with obviously a focus leaning towards the Black community. I didn't put it out to a lot of people. I did post it on Facebook, but I know I have quite a few followers. I got a lot of people telling me they couldn't make it. They wish they had known about it sooner. But I didn't want a lot of people to be joining, because I didn't know if we would have any technical problems. This first time that we were doing this, I couldn't get the live thing to actually work. We were getting that delay, and then it was repeating. But I said all that to say, anybody that's on the call, I plan on doing this about every 2 weeks, and it'll always be on a Sunday. I'll figure out a time, because I got people on the call that I'm not sure this is a good time for them, but I'll figure out a time. So if you know people that are interested in participating in the conversation, then let people know. I'll look for feedback from people to tell me, hey, can you talk about this topic? Can we bring this up? I'm open to any and everything. But like I said, everybody understands there is a slant towards the Black community. And I talked a little bit about the politics and Donald Trump, or asked questions about that stuff, because obviously we're only, what, 10 days away, I think it is now. We're really close to the election. So it's interesting because Richard and I did a presentation a long time ago. I don't even know if he remembers it, but we started each presentation that we did off with a quote. And the quote that Richard used was, if a dog is ready to jump on if a dog jumps on the couch, he better be ready to hold his own in the conversation. I think everybody here obviously held their own. The reason why you guys were asked to participate is because I knew that you would have something to say, especially educational, something that's informative. Um, the name Garrison Jones that you guys see, that's my 15-year-old son. I did not tell him to join. He said, Dad, can I join? He's always interested. Obviously, you guys all know he's a homeowner himself. He's been a homeowner for about 5 years now.
Incredible.
So it's interesting. And Eric had mentioned something about us being the younger of the two with kids. It's interesting that more people don't get their kids involved at a much younger age in conversations like this. I know, and I think everybody is okay with not using profanity, because I know some people here actually use profanity on a consistent basis, but everybody's and we're not Donald Trump, and we're not going to start speaking like crazy. But if somebody does have a kid or somebody that they want to join, then you're more than welcome to invite any young kids, let them hear it. Like I said, what I'll try and do is put out a little bit sooner next time about what the topics will be. Obviously, we won't get to all of them, because as somebody says something that's interesting, then I try and continue that discussion as opposed to just cutting it off and going to the next topic. Even this conversation, I was expecting to last about an hour, maybe an hour and 20, but because everybody was given good information, I did not want to cut it off. So I just let it keep going. But like I said, we'll do this every couple of weeks. I think Richard mentioned that we did not speak much about generational wealth, which should be on the table. I guess it'll be up there with the platinum plan. I don't know. I think Ice Cube said it's a contract with Black America, or actually he didn't say that. He said that what he was talking about was a contract with Black America, and Trump and his, I don't want to call them flunkies, but Trump and his administration basically pulled him into the room to say, hey, can you tell us where we're missing the boat or what's going on? Obviously, it's too little too late, because I think everybody agrees that we do need to vote him out. Somebody made a comment about they're probably Republicans. I think everybody knows that I am a registered Republican. I don't remember the last time.
So stupid.
We forgive you.
So completely stupid.
That I
What?
Republican.
I didn't know
It's
that.
so stupid.
I don't remember
Ridiculous.
that. But that being said, I'm a person that obviously votes based on what I think is good for the masses. And I think anybody that knows me knows that's the way it is. And Michelle and I are constantly talking, and I'm constantly messing with her about why is the vote important, why this, why that, just to get other opinions. And I do have people that ask me, well, because I wear a mask that now says 400 Black dollars. Before that, I wore one said Black Lives Matter. I'm in an area, I think 3 blocks from me, there's probably a rally going on right now, which is a Trump rally. So going to that post office and having to drive through them, or to the Jamba Juice or whatever, obviously I'm going to be challenged with what my mask mean, what this mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. And I'm comfortable having those conversations. I think, like Jasmine said, a lot of people get into that situation and they're not comfortable. And like she said, I love what she said, that if you're in the room and you're silent, then that's worse than not being in the room at all.
Absolutely.
Amen. Amen.
That's exactly
right.
And so again, for the sake of time, I don't want to keep rambling, but I appreciate everybody being on the call. Like I said, next time what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it out a little sooner. Make sure that we have I will be posting this too, so I'm recorded it. Once it's completed downloading, then I am going to post it onto YouTube. I'll send everybody the link, let you know. The people like Melody and Yvette, if you guys want to send me anything, tell me anything. Yvette, you have your hand raised. So
I did. I'm definitely not one of those. I'm probably different from everybody, including yourself, Rene. And greetings to everybody. This is my
Hello.
first time
There.
here on the
Hi.
call. I know you're wrapping up. I had a lot to say.
Say it. We're all interested. That's you made it all clear.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, let me say one
lot.
thing before you say that. Let me say one thing before you say that. The initial gist
Yes.
of the call was only to have a majority, or 6 or 7 of these people are actually board members of the company. So the
I
initial
understand.
gist of the call was to get some of those people to speak and not allow outsiders to speak. But then as
Oh.
No, no, no.
so,
Yeah.
so I'm comfortable
Oh.
with other people speaking,
Yeah.
but go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, yeah.
Say what you have. Say what you have, because I
Can
never
I?
called on you.
I'm gonna be short and succinct, and perhaps you'll invite me back so I can improvise and more on it. Would that be fair?
Yes,
Sure.
Okay.
depending on what you say, I'll be
Okay.
turning. I'm just joking with you. No, go ahead. I'm just joking with you. Go ahead.
Be good or be gone.
I'm one of those who, and I'm speaking from as a Black woman in the Black family, because I can't speak for anyone else. And it's not what every Black person believes in, that's for sure. However, as far as the voting, I don't shame anyone on not voting. Now, did I go vote? Yes. Did I vote for president? No. They're not presenting any agenda for the Black communities. I see them both as white supremacists. So I'll leave that there. I see both parties that way, with their history and what they've done and have not done. Far as the legacy, how with the youth, I believe, are we speaking of Black youth? I'm thinking the Black youth specifically, but also the other youth. It starts with us, and they must be included. And there is a solution that's not being done. Some communities have it and some don't yet. And it is strictly, particularly directed to intra-cultural historical healing, anti-racism work. And I'll leave that there.
That's it.
Cool.
I'll leave it there because I know you.
Since I
I'm
did
gonna leave
this,
it.
everybody, Michelle, did you want to say anything? No. Melody, did you want to say anything?
Can you hear me, Renee?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, yes, I voted, but you knew that. And the younger generation, let's not give up on them. They might come slowly around. They might only come a couple at a time, but we can't give up on them.
Okay, Melody.
Yeah, I won't say a whole lot. I sent you a message in the chat, but I do agree with a lot of what's being said. I definitely don't feel that with the power of influence that we have in a lot of our leaders, sometimes I think that they need to be sort of singled out, and we need to tap more into our leaders because they already have that power of influence going. What if you influence the leader that leads a million to think a different way? And so we do need to think about how to tackle grabbing hold of these leaders, and not just political, but also religious and every other part of that statement. And I also agree with the other gentleman about the media. I do. I was in school for media, went to school for film and directing, so I understand how media and broadcast is set up. And I think that it is the biggest force in how we not only as a people view ourselves, but also how other cultures view us as well. And it keeps us in a brainwashed state, and it definitely needs to be some changes. So I'll say that for right now, but I really thank you guys for allowing me a chance to speak.
Okay. It's interesting because as we end, it comes down to us. I remember hearing a story or something. I was probably at some motivational event. I don't know. But the guy told the story of this sod buster sitting in front of his farm. And he had this big, gorgeous farm. The crops were perfectly manicured. The barn was painted perfect. All the animals looked like they were extremely healthy. And a guy rolls up to him on a wagon, looks at him, some stranger, and says, "Sir, you've really been blessed. God has really blessed you with a gorgeous, gorgeous farm. You must really be happy." He said, "Yeah, I am happy, but you should have seen it when he had it all to himself." So in other words, put the work in. Yes, he was blessed with the actual farm itself, but he actually put the work in. I think that's what it comes down to with just the people on this call, because we can go out and we're going to be affecting a lot of people with the programs that we put together. But if the people on this call basically do what we are supposed to do, then trust me, the Garrisons of the world will take that torch once we're long gone and carry it and keep going with it with the younger generation. That being said,
that's what it's about.
That being said, I appreciate everybody spending 2 hours and 15 minutes with us. I hope, like I said, I hope the next one we'll get a little more participation. I'll actually blast it out to some real people and put it on the real Facebook page, and we'll get a few.
What do you mean, real people?
Yeah, what does that mean?
I'm not.
Wait a minute.
Not real people, but more people. More people.
Oh,
So
my
that was a
goodness.
Freudian slip.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
See, that's what you do when you deal with those Republicans. That's the kind of stuff.
Right.
That's
Right.
That's right.
I'll put it out. I'll put it out to some more people, and get it out there, and we'll see what we need to do. But I appreciate you guys' time, and I'll talk to you guys later. You guys all have a good
Take it easy.
All
Peace.
right.
All right.
Everyone
Bye,
be
everyone.
well. Everyone be well.